You're listening to Tech Girl Talks, a podcast about esports and gaming. For season 3, we're focusing primarily on Counter-Strike, so buckle in, we're about to go. Dinko is a CSGO shoutcaster. So he's one of the gents who bring you all the action in game and paints the picture for you, if you like. Dinko is also that middle ground type caster. At this point in time, this was recorded in September 2022, so he may have blown up by the time you watch this. Consider it his origin story, if you like. He's worked a stack of S-tier events. Those are the big babies, if you're wondering. But he hasn't quite cracked being a permanent fixture of those broadcast lineups. He's not in the trenches fighting for any online game that needs a voice. He's not sitting in his bedroom every night commentating over his friends, hoping someone will hire him. But he isn't casting major grand finals. He's being flown around the world. He's going to LAN events, but he's sitting in this weird middle space. And that was why I really wanted to chat to Dinko, because regardless of all of that, he is an incredibly great play-by-play commentator. He won the ECS Community Caster Challenge alongside Hawker in 2018. And since then, he's worked with a host of different talent that you know very well. And he's also worked for big tournament organizers like PGL, ESL, Faceit. And when I started traveling overseas for esports work, most of my experience lay in Counter-Strike. But at the time, I was told there was no space in the broadcast landscape, specifically for Counter-Strike, because it was oversaturated with top-tier talent. And that's why I wanted to chat to Dinko, because there is a lot of top-tier talent in Counter-Strike and a host of new talent working online broadcast trying to break in. But that middle ground is a really tough space. You've moved on from commentating small teams from your bedroom, but you're not yet at S-tier grand finals. So how do you navigate that? Another interesting aspect to Dinko as a commentator is he's one of the few established shoutcasters that doesn't have a permanent partner. He isn't linked directly and part of a duo. And that for me is fascinating because you don't see that often. All of these things, really interesting. And if you're a fan of Counter-Strike or just a fan of esports, I think you'll really enjoy this chat with Dinko. Dinko, I introduced you right at the start, jumped in here, and one of the things that I mentioned, which I find pretty interesting, is this whole concept of you not having like a dedicated casting partner. Now, everyone I've spoken to, when you say I want to get into shoutcasting, they say you've got to find that other person, and that's your person, and you grow together. Why don't you have a dedicated casting partner?
Well, I think this perspective happened because the majority of the big events that I did were this year, right? So in 2022, I started with Katowice. I feel like I've been working with a bunch of different people this year, and so the most people that know me probably know me from this year, so therefore they see me working with a bunch of different people. But when I got into casting CS, I was kind of put together with a guy called Hawker. You're probably familiar from his YouTube content and some of the events he's casted as well. We won the ECS Caster Challenge, which was a sort of talent competition. Anybody could enter this. I think it was back in like 2018. And we kind of won it together. It was 2 winners, and we won this competition. And it was Faceit flew us out to London to work on the ECS Season 5 finals. And we kind of got paired together, and we really realized, well, you know, of everybody coming up at this point, there really isn't anybody that works with together as well. So we kind of went with that. Hawk is much more of an analytical commentator, and I was wanting to do the play-by-play side of things. So it just lined up really well. Although I think the biggest problem we kind of ran into was a lot of people are very talented, and also we're very young. And I don't think people necessarily took us seriously. When you see us on camera, we just look like 2 really young guys beside each other, right? So I don't know what it was, but we got opportunities, but we never really were able to take that platform and run with it and get on the big ones. We were never really taken seriously as the duo that could do the big events, that could go on and do the A streams. They were always thrown on the B streams. They were always put on the weaker games. We eventually got like a step up at DreamHack Masters, but it was online. So no one really got to see us in action there because the viewership was a little bit lower and we were from our bedroom. So we did have opportunities together. And that was probably the strongest, closest duo partner that I've had over the years. But I think you're absolutely right in the fact that I consider myself turning professional this year and working the biggest events and working with the best talent. And I have not had a duo partner throughout this year. So for me, it's just a tough one with the fact that I don't feel like I'm taken seriously now. I don't think personally we're good enough right now if I was to work with Hawk right now, to compete with the other guys. There's just something about it. It just doesn't hit that next level. So I think that's the issue I have right now is like, well, we have Hawk and I, but we haven't really hit the next level, and there's no one else this year that's worked out. But that could be changing in the future. We'll see.
I like how you just dropped some tea right there. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Got that. Okay. By the time this comes out, he would have announced his permanent duo, and that would be it. But that's cool. I want to get back to this duo conversation, but I actually want to touch on something you said because this is an interesting one for me, where you mentioned that you both looked young on camera. Because I mean, I've teased you myself on Twitter because
Oh yeah.
you do look very young, but actually, I mean, you are a grown man. You've just got that baby face, which is perfect because it means that you will never age. But it's interesting that you brought that up because I think a lot of the time in esports and Counter-Strike, there's a lot of focus on women's appearances, but it does affect men as well being on camera. That is something obviously that you've had to now think about and take into consideration.
Yeah, and I think you take it to heart a little bit early on in your career. I think and you kind of just wait for yourself to grow up a little bit, but then you just kind of get used to it. You know, you do your work, you do it well enough that I think we're in a privileged position as casters, actually, that you're not on camera a lot of the time, right? So you can, it's mainly your voice. And I think a lot of people are shocked when they listen to my voice for an extended period of time. And then I come on camera for like 20 seconds and they're like, what the fuck? You know, it's a 12-year-old casting like a 40-year-old. But yeah, I think that is certainly something I had to deal with very early on. And I don't really care anymore at all. I really don't care. It used to affect me, but then I realized, well, the only criticism that people have, and even then it's not usually criticism, is that I'm not old looking. Well, at least that is fixed by just getting older, I guess. So that kind of works. I haven't been blessed with the beard gene. If I got the beard gene, maybe that could save me a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I don't really care about the personal appearance thing, but in terms of people saying things to me, but whether or not it affected my career early on, I would actually say it probably plays like a subconscious part in the fact that people don't take you seriously. Because I noticed that I got taken a lot more seriously when I worked with an older duo partner. Now, if I work with Hulk, we're both pretty young looking people. I'm 22. I just turned 22 last week. So you know, I am still pretty young. Hulk is a little bit older. I think he's like 24 now, and turning 25 at some point soon. So yeah, we would kind of both of us being a baby face didn't really help. I think people didn't really take us seriously on screen a lot of the time, and I think that kind of led to the permanent stage of, oh, they're really young and upcoming, rather than, you know, let's give them some other opportunities. So yeah, I think maybe that's probably the negative effect it has had.
It blows my mind because obviously you speak to a lot of broadcast talents and they're terrified of aging on camera because they feel like if they
Yeah.
look too old, they don't work. And you're in a situation where you're saying, well, I look too young and I'm not getting the jobs I want. It's never a happy ground. That was completely off
No.
tangent though. I want to talk about the duo thing because I mentioned this in the intro as well. You sit in the space where you've done the big events, you've cracked them, but you're not quite at the hosting the major grand final yet. Is it difficult to now find someone to cast with permanently who's in the same space? Because there aren't a lot of casters sitting in that, I want to say, middle ground, almost just ready to step over, who don't have a dedicated partner at the moment.
Yes, I feel like that's been my biggest problem this year, right? So you do all these big events and you feel like you're ready to take the next step. But the problem is, so many other people are very good, and there's only limited spots around the scene, that it's really hard as someone who's just an individual to go ahead and have the pull to be able to get these spots and deserve those spots. You can't really go up for an event and you see, you know, Hugo, Harry, Scrawny, Launders, those guys get the event and go, oh, you know, there's no reason why I should be there over them because they've been a duo for years and they're very, very talented. So at this point, when you get to this level, it feels like everyone deserves their spot. Everybody is a very talented commentator. So you just kind of have to play the politics side of things, and you have to try and find a duo partner that has a lot of respect in the scene, that has got experience, and also is in the unique position of not having a strong commentary partner themselves, or maybe don't get along with their commentary partner, which is sometimes what happens. But yeah, I feel like it's a really tough spot to be in because I don't really want to do all the stuff from home anymore, because it's kind of like taking a step down in your reputation. And that's something you have to think about. And also the rate side of things. You know, if you take a rate that's very low, but you've been charging this much for an event online, on land, then you kind of shoot yourself in the foot and make yourself step back a bit. So it is kind of weird being in that in between spot where you've kind of got too much experience and you've kind of built your reputation above the online side of things, and then you want to get into the big streams, but it's hard to do that consistently. So a lot of the time, for example, during Pro League this season, I've just been sitting here, I've been off since Cologne, so I'm just sitting here just bored out of my mind, trying to find a purpose. So yeah, I'm just kind of waiting till something comes up, and as I kind of mentioned earlier, it seems like something might be happening, but you never know. You can't really make statements and definitive statements in esports because you never know what might happen. Something could come in and that whole thing could collapse. But there's something at least building that might change that in the future.
He keeps just teasing to the things that are building. So that's what you're listening to. You're going to listen
Yes.
to this.
Well, the thing is, Sam, if I put too much out into the universe, I've got to the point now where I don't trust esports enough that if I say something, it'll all just crumble down. So I'm just waiting till that is 100% confirmed and everything gets over the line on the plans that I have at the moment.
That's completely fair. I mean, you don't have to spill it. I'm going to drop this next week and say that you spilt all this tea. Everyone will then listen to it. That'll be great. But I mean, you mentioned there the politics side, not trusting esports. Is that something that you're struggling with? Because I know for me, when I speak to the more established talent in the scene, especially in Counter-Strike, even them at the top level find it really difficult. There is a certain uncertainty that comes with this job. Is that something that sits heavy in your mind?
Oh yeah, and uncertainty, absolutely, because you feel like you're in a position sometimes where, damn, I'm about to take the next step. I'm about to get the big events, and you think it's all going to line up. And um, I thought it was a good opportunity. I was going to do Pro League, but that didn't happen. And you kind of realize, okay, got to take the negatives and the positives all in one because you need to reframe your mind and say, okay, I'm very early on in my career. I'm not quite there yet. Maybe in terms of your reputation certainly lags behind your ability, and then you've got to just take this time off and realize that maybe it's a blessing in a way. You have time off to go back and look at what you've done during the season that you did previously, and try and improve upon what you've done, and maybe try and strategize your return and how you're going to make the most out of those opportunities and how you're going to build a bit more of your relationship. I think a lot of the learning comes from the times that you're not working, because I feel like people become complacent when they're doing events, right? Because like, well, what's the point in improving because I'm getting hired anyway? But it's the time off where you don't get the event, you go off and you have all this time, and all you think about is how do I get better? How do I make sure that I'm on the next one? And I feel like this off time that I've had a significant period of time now where I've just been sitting, and I've been just improving my abilities, improving my skills and the theory behind things, and trying to break casting down into, well, it's not all just about ability. It's about networking outside of talent members and to the TO, etc. So there's a lot more you have to think about to stabilize your position. It's definitely an unstable job, and getting your mind right is one of the keys to success. I think in this industry is making sure that you don't go a little bit mental. Because I see some casters when they have time off and they're not getting hired, they start tweeting and becoming maybe a little bit desperate online because they feel like they're not getting hired and they want people to kind of feel sorry for them and put pressure on the tournament organizers, when the reality of the situation is everyone who's got the job most of the time. There is a few exceptions every now and then in certain esports and certain situations that maybe a person doesn't deserve it on paper in terms of the ability, but most of the time everybody is very, very talented individuals and deserve the spot that they're there. You just have to wait till your time comes.
Do you not find it quite difficult with specifically with the position you're in Counter Strike? Because for me, Counter Strike, you've got, and I said this earlier, you've got the S tier events, and then you've kind of got the online in your bedroom casting events.
Yeah.
There's not a lot in the middle, which is difficult because when you're starting out, and it's actually why I wanted to speak to you and not speak to say a new caster, because a new caster possibly still has a job,
Yeah.
financially hasn't had to take the big risk. They're doing some casts in the evenings online from their bedroom for a couple of 100 quid or whatever it might be, sometimes for free. But the risk isn't there. And then obviously, if you're already doing S tier events, yes, you're obviously stressed about not getting work. But if you are getting work, you're getting a pretty decent payday. The position you
Yeah.
find yourself in is you've had to give up on the day job, but you're not quite making that massive money. But there aren't a lot of opportunities in the middle to be able to showcase yourself. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So the thing is, you do these big events and you get a lot of exposure when you're at the events, and you do get paid quite a bit. So in the financial side of things, you get enough money to be able to take a month off easily, or maybe 2 months off, right? And you don't really have that issue. But for me, I away. I have my own place. I have everything. So I do have bills. So that's always a little bit worrying because you're like, okay, I have enough money to do me this period of time, but if I don't get hired, there's no there's nothing in the pipeline. I'm just kind of hoping that it will come up. If that doesn't happen, then that's when things start to get a little bit worrying. So I feel like the fact that there's no in between means that I in Counter Strike means I have to go elsewhere to different games and branch out my skill set, which means I need to learn how to host or do gimmicky events for sponsored companies. I'm flying out tomorrow to Berlin to do a Logitech event. So I'm going to be going out there and just like a fun event where the general public come in. And I think we're doing that one with Frankie Ward, etc. So yeah, I mean, that's going to be fun. It's not obviously the passion projects. It's just a little bit. It's obviously just a bit of fun hanging out with some talented people and getting a bit of cash to keep you going till the next event. And obviously, CS is the main passion of mine. It's the game that I didn't get into casting because I wanted to commentate. I got into casting because I was a shit CS player and I wanted to be involved in the circuit. And then I realized, damn, casting is pretty fun. Now I've fallen in love with the profession, but originally I got into it because of the love of the game, and obviously that doesn't go away. So it is not even an aspect of I want to just be involved in the events, but I can't be involved with the events all the time. And that one is the worst. I don't care about the money as much. I got into it because I want to do the events. So not being able to tell the story, not being able to have the opportunity to add your voice to some memorable clips, some history of Counter-Strike, that's the bit that bothers me. That's the bit that annoys me the most, missing out on those opportunities. And obviously the money is a nice part, but it's not the main thing for me.
I love that you mentioned that about getting into it because you loved Counter Strike. I mean,
Yeah.
I can relate because obviously I got into esports because I loved Counter Strike. I couldn't play it. I was absolute shit at it as well. But I knew all the players in the scene in South Africa, and I was really passionate about that. I switched away from that because everyone said to me, "Oh, there's no space for you in Counter Strike." Which, I mean, I've told you the story and I've said it lots of times, but
Mm.
I was still really passionate about the game. And I know with you, your background, I mean, you didn't only commentate. I think at one point, if I remember correctly, you even went and admin and sort of did runner jobs at certain events just so you could be
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah. So I worked at the Face It major. So I did the ECS challenge as I mentioned before, which means I worked on the ECS event. I didn't get paid for that. Obviously, it was more of a work experience, shall we say? It was great work experience. I got to work in front of a crowd and everything. So it was thousands of people casting in Wembley Arena in London, which is massive. And then I did the minor qualifiers for Europe and Asia, which was fantastic. I got paid like £300 a day or something for that, which was amazing back then. So yeah, I did that, and then I kind of didn't have anything because the major was on. But I'd made a relationship with the producer of the show, Niklas, who was the producer actually of our event we did out in Sweden in Lund, actually, that Pinnacle Cup. So producer Niklas with BME actually brought me on board with the Face It guys, and he said, we have this vision mixer. She's really talented, but she does traditional sports for Sky Sports Premier League, right? So she doesn't know when to come in and out of Counter Strike. When the bomb is about to go off, she just cuts without seeing who saved weapons, etc. So my job was to come out and be the in-game director or something along those lines, where I would, tell her to, you come out of game now, go into game, just making sure that we caught all the action. And I actually got paid more to do that than I did casting back then, but it was just fun being involved in the production side of things. But as I was sitting in the gallery, as I was sitting in the production at the back, I was watching the moments coming out. I was watching the casters, and the trophy lift. I didn't even want to be in the production room. I wanted to be out watching it on the stage and be a part of the show on front stage. And I think as much as that was fun, it did kind of make me realize that I couldn't work back there yet. I had to experience the front of the stage job, so that's what kept me hungry.
Do you think it helps though when you work behind the scenes with production? Because I personally think it gives you a far better idea of what it actually takes to put on a show. Do you think that it gave you that sort of insights?
Absolutely, I think especially when you're very young, getting into the industry, if you come in because you're purely passionate about Counter Strike, you don't know anything about the production side of things. Now, I did study film and documentary making. That's what I wanted to do before I got into esports. I wanted to be a filmmaker, so I did know a little bit about productions and how things worked and the production side of things. But the scale of a live broadcast is something that's very different to anything that is done more traditionally in terms of like filmmaking techniques. So live production is a lot more intense. You have people doing multiple jobs live. So if you make a mistake, you can't fix that in post, right? It's just a mistake live. Everybody sees it. So there's a lot of pressure on people, and very expensive to run a good production team. And it's really hard to find good production members. So I remember during that FACEIT major, we had a lot of university students sitting behind us who, you know, it was their first gig on the job, and they were talented, they knew what to do, but you know, they aren't these super experienced veterans. And I noticed that the person that I was working with, the vision mixer from Sky Sports, who was an older lady, who was very, very experienced and very good at her job, but sometimes become frustrated with the newer people in the job who hadn't learned how everything works. So even people who studied for years how to work in the broadcast background side of things weren't always up to speed to keep up with the best in the business. So I think that's the problem with esports. We aren't really there yet where we have these huge production teams. A couple of companies do, but you know, we're still going to have issues with the wrong graphic being played. We have limits because our producer has to do every game of the day and go to bed and get like 4 hours sleep. So mistakes happen. So it gives me a lot of respect to understand what it takes to put an esports broadcast together, what limits we have in esports, and still we're able to put on a pretty good show. So that to me definitely opened my eyes to the whole the lifestyle from the people that make sure our jobs run smoothly.
100%. So it's interesting. Do you remember that jump when you went from casting in your bedroom to your first LAN event? Do you remember what you were feeling at the time?
Yeah, so the weird part is a lot of people probably grinded a lot longer than I did. I started casting the start of the year in 2018, and I did maybe a couple of online events. I think I did 1 month long event where I did twice a week. I would do like three best of threes a night, and I maybe got €50 for the entire month. So that worked out at what, like 50 pence an hour or something like that, or something less than that. So yeah, it was basically free. But it was great fun, and it was cool to actually get paid for something. And then a couple of months later, I just wanted experience. I just wanted to get better at it. So I seen this ECS caster challenge that had been run a few times. I think some notable names that have won it, I believe, were Scrawny, obviously, from the Blast side of things. Everybody knows him now. I think Seaside, he'd done a few events back in the day for CS. And we had Hugo, I think, started with FACEIT too. So you had a lot of people who entered via this FACEIT challenge. And so I entered into that competition mainly just to get a lot of open IP games and a lot of experience to build my own channel. And I didn't think I was going to win. I didn't even have intentions of winning because I didn't even stream that much. Like, I didn't even do that many games because I was going to school at the same time. So I couldn't wait up and do all the NA games and everything. So I maybe did 10 matches in total out of that whole qualifying stage. And I ended up getting an email like a year later. I didn't even notice that I had it, saying that they wanted me to come out and do this in London. So I was like, this is a scam. Like, I just thought it was a straight up scam because my friend a year earlier, we were going to go to ECS and get tickets to go watch as spectators before I'd even thought about casting. And he had an ECS ticket scam into his email box. I was like, oh, this is just another one of these. But then I investigated a little further, and I checked LinkedIn and found the guy's email, and I was like, oh, shit, this guy actually works to FACEIT. This is legit. And they actually, yeah, that was just wild. I went out to FACEIT in London and did the ECS finals in an arena. So yeah, day 3 of casting on LAN for the first time ever, and it was in an arena with thousands of people in London. So kind of weird.
You didn't feel any imposter syndrome, I mean, did you just
Yeah,
fit right in
I
there?
don't know. I think I was so like hyped that I just went in and I just did it, and then it came back to me like months later, like shit. What were they doing? You know, like why did they put these kids out there? It did actually have a pretty weird start to it, to be honest. It was sadly a little kid had passed away from cancer, and he was an Astralis fan. And this is the first game we're doing. It's Astralis versus Cloud9. It has this minute of silence to remember this kid who passed away. And comes the first thing, I'm thinking, oh, this is sad. In comes a member of production, hands me a note and says, oh yeah, we're coming to you after this. No one told us this, right? So this is just on the fly. Like, we're live in like 35 seconds. I get handed this little piece of paper, and I'm just hyped, excited as fuck to get on the stream and start casting my favorite team at the time, Astralis. I'm just really excited to be part of this whole thing. And now I've got to become somber and get myself into a sad mode to release this little statement about the kid that unfortunately passed away. So I think that kind of ruined my first experience. I never really got out of that mindset during the game. So I think it was just so much adrenaline and focus of not messing up that moment that didn't really allow me to think, there was people behind me, which definitely in a way helped, I suppose, but not the ideal way to start things.
So what a thing to throw at someone on
Yeah,
land, right? First
yeah,
time, like
mental.
yeah, he has a really
Yeah,
serious moment. Don't mess this up. And good luck with that. You've never done this before. That's pretty
yeah,
terrifying.
yeah.
Do you think COVID changed the casting landscape? Because for me, obviously, so many people started commentating. You saw like an influx, especially in Counter Strike, of these Counter Strike commentators when COVID hit. Just because I suppose we were all sitting at home and we had nothing to do. Do you think it changed the landscape a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it got rid of a lot of commentators that didn't want to do it from home. We've seen a few guys step aside. Sadicus left for a while, and Henry G obviously has just made his return back in Pro League, but he was out of the game for a long time. Other reasons surrounding that too, in terms of him just being burnt out and not feeling it anymore, probably played a part in that. But I think when it went online, a lot of opportunities then presented itself because you had the ability, this unique ability to do a tier one event in the morning, and then in the evening do a North American event on the same day. So I was doing DreamHack Masters A stream in the afternoon, and in the morning at like 6 a.m. I started doing the PGL RMR qualifiers for Asia. So I was doing two events. One was meant to be in China, and one obviously in Sweden, but both of them were online. So I was able to do two events at once. Very tiring, but a unique experience, and a lot of practice, and a lot of eyes in front watching your casting. So I think that was a unique experience for me, being able to do all of these bigger events, getting a lot more viewers, and building relationships online with these TOs and showing them, I'm okay. I can do these events without really having to leave the comfort of my own home. So yeah, that definitely was something very different and something unique, and obviously very financially benefiting because we actually got paid the same as we did on LAN, maybe a little bit of a discount, but for the most part, we ended up getting paid pretty similarly to that of what we got paid on site. So I ended up doing two events that you couldn't do otherwise. If you're at one event, yourself, you're there, you go to the hotel, you're exhausted because you're actually on site, you're moving around all day. If you're doing an event from home, the furthest you walk is to the bathroom and back or the kitchen, right? So you could do two events, get paid the same as you would doing two events. That was pretty fun. I enjoyed that. But what I didn't enjoy and what I really hated was I was living in Poland at the time. I don't speak Polish, and I only had my girlfriend living in Poland with me, so I didn't speak English to a single human being other than her for like 6 months. So the social aspect is another thing in esports for me that is just incredible, right? You get to travel the world with your friends, see everybody, hang out, go to bars, restaurants. You really live a high octane life with a lot of adrenaline, and that kind of disappeared, which kind of makes your life just feel like it's going by at like 1 mile an hour constantly. So that part I didn't enjoy, but the casting landscape was cool because you could do so many events. And yes, that meant a lot of the newer commentators getting opportunities because the larger, more established commentators did not want to work from home. So you had a lot of opportunities for newer casters, and I think I benefited from that greatly because I did the biggest events of my career during the pandemic. So that was certainly something that benefited me.
Definitely benefited you because I think after that we saw that sort of rise for you. But it's also interesting when you mentioned the social aspects because I think a lot of people think when you're, especially like when you're in esports, that obviously you're
Yeah.
sitting at home all day playing games, but they don't realize on a broadcast how much interaction you have with everyone else around you. The reading of social cues. It's really difficult. I can imagine to have to commentate now online with someone who's you can't see their body language, you can't really interact with them. How did you adapt to that?
Well, the good thing is for me, I feel like I feel like I never really had to adapt at all because the majority of my work was done online before that, right? So I would do all the online qualifiers, I would do all the online B streams, I would do all that. So there wasn't actually that hard for me when I went to online during the pandemic. But I know people like Scrawny and Launders really hated it. They couldn't get their style going as comfortably because they're used to working in studio for every event they did with Blast, and they rarely did anything online. So yeah, that was tough for people like that who were so used to working online in the studio environment. But for me, it was pretty easy, honestly, and I didn't really struggle too much. And the people that I worked with worked online too. So the two people I casted the most with during the online period was Holka and then Blair. I did a lot with Blair actually. We did B streams for masters, then we did a couple like RMR qualifiers, PGL. So we did a lot of stuff, Blair and I, online. So yeah, it was cool. I really built a relationship with people especially over that online period, which is kind of weird because you get so used to just having this digital friendship, and then you kind of see them in person the next year, and it's great. It's a great feeling to actually be able to do that. But yeah, for me, I found it pretty easy to go online, and then I obviously felt when I went on LAN the following year that I was way better. But yeah, online wasn't too hard for me.
Do you think it helps? I mean, because you've had to jump around a bit, and we spoke about this not having like a select duo.
Yes.
I mean, I personally think, and I know there's two schools of thought here, but I think it makes you far more talented at being able to adapt to any situation and just stronger at reading people because you've had to work with so many personalities. I know others will say you become a stronger caster if you're in that duo, but I mean, do you think that that's ultimately helped you? Because now that you've moved to LAN, like you are able to kind of just fit into whichever team's there. You know how to deal with different personalities.
Yeah, I think it definitely has benefits. It also has negatives. I think at this point in my career, it's probably better to have had this year because I got to work and learn from so many different people. You know, I'm still very early on into my career, and the people I've been working with are incredibly talented individuals with so much experience that have done all the big events, they've done the majors, they've done other esports even. So to work with those people and really get an understanding of how they work and what they're good at, and being able to try and morph my casting to fit what they're good at, that is obviously something that I've really enjoyed learning. And I was really lucky to work with pretty much every top color commentator in the business apart from Henry G so far. So you know, I've worked with this year obviously Chad, Sponge. I worked with Moses, which was awesome. I even worked with Yanko. Now that was a pretty funny occurrence. So I actually worked with Yanko during a quarterfinal because Hawka had to go. He was contractually obliged to leave the arena in Dallas. I was meant to work that one with Sponge, but he had COVID. So we're just sitting here and we had no one for me to cast with unless Moses did every single playoff game in Dallas. So, you know, Yanko and I were a lot of us were just, having a little drink the night before, and we came up with this idea, why don't Yanko and I cast this quarterfinal together, because it's G2. It's obviously a bit of fun around that one, and it ended up really well. You know, we made a skip before it, and I think a lot of people, even Yanko himself, are like, how is this going to work out? How, because Yanko hasn't casted in a very long time, and even when he did cast, it was more of a chill online environment. This is an arena cast. You know, this is my first time casting in an arena, and this is this is my second time, but first time when I'm actually a real caster. And this is Yanko's first time casting in arena too, first time casting in maybe years. So yeah, that was a risk, but I think it really worked, and I was really impressed with his ability. And I found myself being able to adapt pretty quickly to a non-caster style. Like, I just gave him a lot more space in the downtime. You know, I took it back. I really didn't want to interject at all. Whereas if I'm casting with Sponge or I'm casting with Moses, they're obviously a lot more comfortable casting. So I'll interject. I'll give them hand signals and know and trust in them that they'll hand off to me. So that's probably the difference. And I've learned a lot of skills working with so many different people of different capabilities, and really learning from every single one of them.
So, what would you say makes a real caster? Because you used that term just now, and I'm curious. What's the difference between an unreal and a real caster? I mean,
Um, it's a good question because obviously there's people that cast, there's people that have a microphone, and I think the majority of people are people that have a microphone and talk in front of the screen. Real casters, I would say, understand the pillars of good commentary. Now, there is a structure. There's a structure to it, and a lot of people will go with that structure. And then there's some people that are more hybrid. And the structure I'm talking about is obviously play by play and the color commentator. Now, I personally, this is my style of casting. I prefer having a hard play by play that is good at kind of the hosting side of things, directing the narratives and setting up the color based on the information that they have available that the color might know as well. So for me, it's understanding what part of the game that you need to shut up and what part of the game is yours to go for, and how to control the emotions of the game and get across the point of how impressive or how normal a play is. I see too many casters nowadays coming up, and even some of the ones that are in good positions in other esports. I don't think we so much have it in CS, but there's casters who just scream at everything. And there's, when you're screaming at everything, nothing is hype, nothing's important and actually does an injustice to the viewer, to the player, and yourself, because you're kind of showing that you don't know what you're talking about if everything is incredible. And you're also telling the viewer that might not know the most about the game that this is incredible, and then they really don't understand what's happening, and therefore you lead to an injustice to the player who, if you've told the viewer this is incredible when it's something that doesn't take as much practice or as much ability to pull off. So for me, that it's a caster understands your number one role is to set up the players and present the player's performance to the viewer in a way that really puts forward how incredible their skill set, dedication, and abilities are inside of the server in a way that covers everything. You have to have the expert opinion that really understands and can really put across what a player's just done. And you've got to have the play by play. You can tie that all up into a nice bow and deliver it in an entertaining way and in a way that provides excitement and emotion to the player, because to the viewer, because that's the most important thing as well. This industry is an entertainment industry, but when you're talking about an esport or a sport in general, you've got to do justice to the player. You've got to be able to deliver that. And there's too many casters out there that don't really understand why they're there. It's not about you. It's about the player. It's about the show. And it's understanding what methods you use to put that across.
I'm so glad you said this because I mean I don't cast Counter-Strike, but I'm a viewer most of the time, and then sometimes I'm a
Yep.
desk host or interviewer. But I know for me, especially from a desk hosting point of view, and I'll probably get into trouble for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Sometimes I'll be watching the game and I'm trying to like prep a desk, and we're all sitting there going, "This is a pretty boring game." We're trying to find those points. We're like, "Nah, this is pretty. It's
Yes.
average gameplay. Neither of these teams are really showing their best ability." And then you've exactly what you've got this caster on the screen shouting like they've just freaking changed the course of Counter-Strike with what they've just done. And you're sitting there being like, this is average at best, which is hard because now we've got to go back to the desk and keep that energy, but that energy is completely false. So I'm glad that you said that, because also from a viewer perspective, sometimes I know when I pick up my phone and I start scrolling through Twitter that the game's probably not really at the level it needs to be. But then you've got someone shouting on the screen trying to make you
Yeah.
believe. And I do think there's a weird thing that a lot of, maybe it's like new casters, and again, I'm talking from a place of not a caster, they think that they need to do that super hype because that is their way of telling the player's story, that they've got to hype the players up. But I think it's understanding, and I'm hoping I'm understanding your answer as well, like understanding where the balance lies as well in terms of the job you have to do for the players, but also the job you have to do for the viewer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is something that happens with newer commentators a lot, because what every single clip you see of a commentator or the biggest moments of a caster to make them famous is the moment where they're popping off, right? Is the big line, is the big, is for CS, it's obviously a lot of Sadicus lines or the big apple, etc. So you have all these moments. And so everything you have seen about casting, everything you know about casting in terms of what makes you famous is those lines. You go in and you have such limited exposure to the casting job that you feel like, shit, I don't know when my next opportunity is, so I'm just going to send it. And that's just going to make people hate listening to you. I think actually for that's not exactly true actually, because I think there's some casters that just scream their head off, and for some reason they have this built cult following that just love screaming at it. But for the majority of people, you will just piss them off, and they will not listen to your casting at all. They'll just mute the stream, or they'll really suffer through it, because it's just grating to listen to. I think you're on air for, in Counter Strike, you're on air for 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours sometimes, right? So if you were screaming at 100%, 80% of the time, people are just going to be so done listening to you. You need to be a voice that is easy to listen to for hours, right? You have to be informative, entertaining, a little bit funny. Maybe that's not your style, and you're just a lot more informative. And then you blend with someone that maybe is a little bit more funny and gets that personality out of you. You have to understand that there's times to just be chill and enjoy and bring a level to the broadcast that isn't 100%, because then when you are at that level, when you're at that medium level and you raise it a little bit, then people's ears perk up, and then they start to look for what is happening on screen, because you're really portraying that this is a moment that has broken the lull, that has broken the standard, and you then pick up on that. So yeah, that's something a lot of new casters have, and I think it comes in part because they don't have a lot of opportunities to cast, and so they send it on every single opportunity they get, and it actually does more harm than good. Obviously, you can send it a little bit heavier on some of the bigger plays that happen within the game, but always try and do the game justice, no matter if it's your first cast or second, you know, if you're not getting a lot of opportunities, you got to find that understanding, that balance.
How many times do you have new casters slide into your DMs asking you how they get into casting and get where you get?
I used to have it a lot, but actually, I had a lot more during the pandemic, I guess. But like nowadays, I don't really actually get it that much. Maybe I just don't really, take note of it as much because I feel like a lot of the people just send you like a VOD, and it's like, all right, as much as I really I was in your position before. Reading every VOD, watching every VOD is just impossible because most of them, I click it and it's like, yeah, this microphone is like recorded on a walkie-talkie, right? It's like that first thing you got to do is get a walkie-talkie. But in general, if people ask questions, how do you get in? How did you get in? How do I get in? I always reply to them and try and talk to them. So I get it every now and then, like once every few months, maybe you'll get someone. I used to get a lot more, but now not that often. I think there's a lot of casters, as you mentioned earlier, with the pandemic. A lot of new casters got into the scene, and I think with the content that a lot of people have put out there, I think most people actually know how to get into casting now. I don't think it's as like a hard closed gateway as much as it used to be. I think now it's pretty easy to understand how to get in, right? It's like we have a friend, Harry Hugo and I, that we play with Brandon. He's called B Dog, and we just played with him for years. And he wasn't a caster. He did something like finance. It was like an accountant or something. But he just loved Counter Strike. At the start of this year, he just decided, you know what, I'm going to volunteer to cast something. And now he's doing He's going to be doing a big event, shall we say. I'm not sure if it's announced yet, but he's going to be doing a rather big event soon. And he's been doing a bunch of the ESL games, and he's gone out and did a LAN for EPL conference. And that's all in the space of less than a year. So I think it's pretty obvious nowadays how to get into casting. So maybe that's why people haven't been asking as much.
I mean, I think you're quite humble because I think what ends up happening is when you reach a certain level, people stop asking because they think you won't reply, which might have happened there. But I also love the fact, I love that story of like, I always love the stories of people who just fell into things by accident. But I
Yeah,
do think
yeah.
it helps B Dog just a little bit that he was playing with three commentators because you naturally have that charisma that he's probably been able to pick up on and learn from as
Yeah.
well. He got help without you even realizing it. You should all get a commission from all his jobs now.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, we'll all take like 5% each. I think. There we go. We might just, but he did just recently go full time, so we don't want to financially wreck him. I guess so. We'll let him. He's doing a good job, actually. I think. Yeah, maybe him just kind of understanding, basically how we're talking on TeamSpeak or whatever, because you're in this industry for so long, and I think it's quite. I don't know. It feels like it's just a small group of people that you become friends with talent members who are your direct competitors because you're the only people really in the world that live this lifestyle. So if you're going to be spending a lot of time with people that understand you and talk about the same things and interests, this you sort of have a lot of in common, they're likely to be the talent members that do a very unique job like yourself. So I feel like we all kind of just forget that there's a real world out there sometimes, and we're in this little bubble. And the way we talk on TeamSpeak, we'll talk about how the industry works without really knowing that maybe someone's kind of soaking this all up and realize, and they're gaining education and understanding of how it works. And maybe that did help him get up the ladder a bit earlier because he definitely did very well very quickly. So that's cool.
You mentioned that though, because obviously you've now traveled to the lands and it's tough. I think as cool as it is, and all our jobs are pretty freaking cool, it is really tough. And people don't understand because you are live, you're constantly being judged, you've constantly got to up the ante, you've there's so many working parts to this that I think a lot of people outside don't necessarily see. But at the same
Hmm.
time, like you said, the only people that maybe understand the struggles you're going through are the people that are competing for the very jobs you are. Isn't that, I mean, and this is the political side of it, which I try and stay out of, but it is something that I think is interesting for someone who's maybe coming into the scene or someone who's been in the scene for a while. It's really difficult because the very people that you think understand you the most are the very people that ultimately will break your heart at some point.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, some of my best friends in the world, right? Are Harry and Hugo, right? There's those guys spent a lot of time with him. Scrawny as well, and we play games with each other all the time. We talk to each other. We have group chats. We just talk about We share our achievements outside of esports. Getting a new home or getting a new car or something like like we just talk about random shit together. Um, but then you realize like, yeah, okay, this is all going really well right now. Everybody's getting hired, and then there comes a point where someone gets an event the other one doesn't. It's like, shit, as much as I'm happy for you, I kind of wanted to be there instead. So yeah, I guess it is kind of a very unique, strange relationship you have with your friends in this industry. Um, and I don't, I think honestly, it's kind of weird how our relationship is so good. Like we don't care if someone gets the event because we just kind of understand. We don't backstab each other. We have that kind of respect. Um, but I think you got to be careful too, because from the experiences we've had of some of the older talent too in the past, it hasn't always been all that friendly, and it can lead to over familiarity, can lead to some disasters down the line. So you kind of have that in the back of your head that one of you might just turn insane at some point. So you always have to be aware of that. But yeah, I think right now we're balancing it all pretty well. And for me, it's like it's a bit annoying because you're happy and also kind of jealous of your friends sometimes, which is it's definitely a unique experience.
I mean, I think that you're self-aware enough that you can say it out loud, which means that you aren't going to turn insane just yet.
Yes.
But it's
Not yet, not yet.
yeah. I do
Eventually,
think
the self awareness might disappear. And that's the maniacal side of me, probably.
I'm going to give you three major grand finals for you to turn
Oh,
insane.
I'll take one of them at this
You think
point.
one? Okay,
That would
after
be
one,
incredible.
the head will blow up and we'll have to deal with crazy you for a bit. We'll bring you back to earth. But I want to cross back to the question I asked about people asking for advice, because it's the most obvious question, but you got to ask it. So there's someone sitting at home, they're casting their friends playing, they're not making any money. How do they, in your opinion and from your side, how do they take the next step?
Well, be honest with yourself and think, are you good enough to actually, I don't even think that matters anymore, because some of the people I'm hearing on broadcast nowadays is
Oh,
pretty.
not good. Yeah,
Yeah,
there we
it's
go.
pretty.
I said it. You didn't have to.
Yeah, it's pretty questionable. Yeah, I seen a clip viral today of some guy just calling out a player for possibly match fixing while on broadcast. So that
I
was,
saw it too. That was the one I was
yeah,
thinking about when I was like, not good. That was literally what
I
I
was
was
just like,
thinking about.
yeah, it's like, well, obviously he wasn't quite ready to, or didn't have quite the understanding of, what the etiquette is when you go live. Try and educate yourself before you throw yourself in the deep end. Start real low. Start where no one's watching. Start where you'll fuck up and make all the mistakes, and the criticism and backlash you'll get is like 5 people. And then as you have done that and you build your education on casting by listening to shows with other talent members doing it, some of the best guys, you read Reddit threads, you read some controversies. Honestly, is pretty good too, because you know what to avoid. Um, Learn all the etiquette first of all, and then build your ability to the point where you feel good enough to be on a show where you actually get paid some money. And you can go ahead, and there's so many options that are willing to take anybody on, and just go ahead and say, I have all this experience. Look at the volunteer experience I have. Um, a lot of people in the UK start with Epic LAN. It seems to be a pretty good one. I've never done one, but they seem pretty good. And Insomnia as well. I started in the Irish LAN scene, where I did a university event, which was just some people are fighting over the fact that someone didn't get someone a Subway, and I had to bring my own microphone and everything. So I mean, I started there. That was pretty good. Mitch Man, who's doing the Valorant champions, started there with me too. We did the same event together. So, you just start basically for free, do it for fun, do it for passion, and then use all the experience you've done for free to go and get your first paid gig. Now you will get paid like absolute ass. Someone will definitely try to make you like a modern day slave, and but you will obviously be aware of the situation that you're not really in a position to fight that just yet, and go ahead and take that money, do the event, and build yourself from there. Just keep approaching the next step. Once you've done a few of the smaller tournaments, go to the next one, go to the next one. And then, really important, is to build a network of talent member friends. Everyone that's successful that I've noticed has a friend group of talent members that they band together and they share information with. And that is very important, because if you are doing an event and, or say you're not doing an event, your friends are doing an event, one of them gets sick or one of them can't do it anymore, if it, who is going to get it? You, the random person that doesn't talk to these people, or their friend. That how many gigs of I got doing that is unbelievable. Someone can't do it, you get asked to call up because you're their friend. It's just really good to do that. It's really good to build a friendly network with other talent members around your level, and really build off that. I think that's one of the best things that I did in my career was make a friend group of talent that all helped each other out. They went to TOs and pitched, here's 4 casters instead of just me. Here's 4 commentators. We'll fill your entire event and we'll work together and we'll just kind of dominate the scene that way on your way up. So I think the number one thing that I think is important is building a network of talent members you are friends with.
I love that. Teamwork makes the dream work. I had to throw in a cringy
Yes.
line. That's what I've done. So I got 2 more questions for you because I know that you obviously have to run off and pack and fly on out of here. The first question, because this is about Counter-Strike, so we got to bring it right back. Who is the best player you've met so far? Your favorite interaction meeting one of the top players? Who was it and why was that so special to you?
Hmm. I suppose actually it'll be Glaive actually after they won map 1 of the 2018 Face It Major final. It was when I was working in production, and I was a big fan of Astralis when I was a kid. Like when I was like 16, I went and got all the Astralis jerseys, went on to the events and everything, and then they started winning everything. So I went off, and obviously during the production truck, I was just right at the back of the stage. So they won map 1 against Navi. It's super easy. It looked like, it was a very one-sided game. Glaive comes off at the halftime break, and he is sweating, properly sweating, red face, focused. He looks exhausted. This looked like it was an easy game, an easy first game. And I jokingly said to him as he walked down the stairs, I went, "Oh, easy game." And he goes, "No," like straight in my face. Anything but easy. It was, so difficult. This level is so hard. And I was like, shit, okay, it really gave me an insight into, how much these players, how much it means to them, the intensity, the pressure of the arena. And that's just like a small couple second interaction, but it was one that really left a mark on me as a caster, I think, because it comes back to the point I mentioned earlier where you're like, okay, this makes sure that you do justice to the player, because a viewer at home sometimes doesn't know we're just playing video games in a lot of people's heads, but you don't know the intensity and the level these guys have to focus at, and how much concentration, how exhausting, how much work and dedication they've put into not making mistakes, and the pressure of the crowd looking at you, millions of people watching from home, and the amount of money that you're about to win if you close this one out. So there's so much pressure there you really have to understand from the human element. And I think that interaction with Glaive really helped me understand that further, and really personified the problem for me, and really helps with my casting, because I kind of remind myself of that, every now and then.
I just love the fact that I could actually hear him in my head saying no. I've
Yeah,
heard
yeah.
that. I've heard a no from Glaive before, so I like that.
Yeah, I did say no a couple of months ago. Obviously, we were in Sweden. We had that ping pong table, and I was pretty sick, like
I
ill.
remember.
Not sick at ping pong, but I was ill. And I played Glaive a game of ping pong and table tennis or whatever, and I got beat, narrowly got beat. So I feel like if I was in tip top shape, I could take it. I could take him. So I want a rematch versus Glaive someday. So that's going to be my new favorite interaction with a player, is when I beat Glaive in table tennis eventually.
We'll make it happen. And then, of course, my final question for you, and I think this is the most difficult one to answer, but let's see. Maybe you'll find it easy. Why do you love Counter Strike?
Oh, this is actually pretty easy for me, because there's so many reasons. So Counter Strike is something. The initial love that I have for it was because I was into other FPS games, and I kind of seen this YouTube series where a guy was like kind of highlighting best clips of the week of video games, and Counter Strike was always in the number 1 and 2 spot. And I just thought this game looked shit. I was a kid. The graphics are so bad. Like, why are people playing this? This just looks like a worse Call of Duty. And then my friend at school started playing it, and my older cousin was playing it. So I got it on the Steam winter sale for like £6 or something, when you did have to buy CS:GO. And I started playing on my little laptop, and I went into a DM server, and I just got killed immediately. And I was like, I can't play this. This is so hard. I just quit, and I had the worst laptop ever as well. But I went away, and I came back, and I actually broken my arm playing football at school, and so I was off school for a bit, and I loaded up CS, and I started playing CS with my broken arm with my cast on, which is a bit mental. And I got to like Gold Nova 1 doing that, and I realized, shit, this is so cool. Like, this game has layers to it. This has a skill based matchmaking system. There's so many different mechanical skills you have to learn, and then obviously you discover the esports side of things, and you see players are playing on a stage with people watching. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line. People are making a career out of this. They're in sports teams. They're competitive. That was the initial thing that caught me. But the reason I love Counter-Strike as a game as a whole is because it's really the perfect video game. It's so easy to understand from a viewer perspective in terms of, there's 5 players, you have 1 life in a round. It's first to a certain amount of round wins, 16. And if you shoot everybody in the other team within that certain time of stopping them from planting the bomb, you win the round. It's very easy. That concept is very simple. But when you kind of understand the base level and you kind of explain to someone, this is how the next level works. This is the utility. This is the hundreds of different moves that you can make, all the combinations, how they will make the defense react, how they will make your attacking side react, how you can get the most out of your utility. Knowing all the utility, discovering that you can learn so much more years and years on in this game. It's just unbelievable how many different things there is, and how you can be absolutely terrible. And then there's someone like Simple who's on the other scale, right? Who's just unbelievable phenom that no one can touch, right? So it's that sort of ability to be a superstar in Counter-Strike that I don't think many other esports have. The fact that you can be someone so good like Simple, and you can not always carry your team, but you can do it a lot, where you have this individual ability. Everything's within your power. Everything's within your control to control the game and understand that you have the capabilities of pulling it off. It's not role based. It's based on your abilities as a player and your decision making tree and your abilities to do that. So that's why I love CS, just because it's so complex but also simple at a very base level.
You've been listening to Tech Girl Talks, a podcast that myself, Sam Tech Girl Wright, hosts. Season 3 is all about CSGO, specifically focusing on Counter-Strike, and you were just listening to Dinko, a CSGO Shoutcaster, give us a little bit of an insight into the job and the role that he has in the industry. If you want to find out more about Dinko, I've included all his social media handles in the description of this podcast. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please let us know. We love some feedback. You can get hold of me pretty much all over the internet at TechGirlZA. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'd appreciate it very much.